How nongom nui the bandanio buns jinkadeg jagnashimong preterite mo jinkadeg jagnashimong buns dash the objecton gin win Eshki-nishnaabemjig. How gamajta go dash mis nen de man gada nanog dwen mananig gdin wen magnug with the chmuk man king ma jagnashu king guy bungin zangendum nanog dwen man is webak nongum Miigwech kendaman Pete and Dogwood je nanog the win mog ingyu you make a dayjig George Floyd bun meanwhile Breonna Taylor bun Ahmaud Arbery bun kinago winwa ga Mr. God the Conwell nin one me wenji kendaman bungi gada wewene gada nanog dwen don nonig ingo the bygons goeta. So I was just thinking that in honor of our relatives who've lost their lives at the hands of police, it's a very difficult situation that's going on right now. So I think we could take a minute to remember them, to think of them, because this is a very important thing that's happening right now, and it's something that we're also very familiar with, being Anishinaabe, being Indigenous people. So I'll ask that we just take a moment to remember them, think of our relatives, and think of other people who who have undergone this sort of thing. So we'll just take a minute to think. Miigwech ginwa. Majta da nongom we bond on buns kwen we dijindan bangi wa gig dion wa dijindaman geget nui jagnashim nongom bangis nagad je de bandaman technical things Anishinaabe. So I'm going to speak mostly Jagnashim one today, just to try to make myself understood, because I can't speak Anishinaabe one that good yet to be able to talk about these sorts of things. So we're going to go over some review first, a couple things that has already been talked about in these online classes, just because they're relevant to what we're going to talk about. So A and B form, we won't worry about C form too much today, so we'll review A and B form, because the way buns work in A and B form is differs quite a bit. Also talk a bit about tense marking, because we're going to look at how buns work under different tenses. And we're going to review vowels, because I'm also going to talk about vowel syncope and differences in dialect. As many of you know as learners, there's a couple dialects like Odawa, like Eastern Ojibwe, like the way we talk here where I'm from, It's very different from some of the Western dialects, just in terms of short vowels not being, short unstressed vowels not being pronounced. So we're going to review vowels in order to talk about that. So after some review, we'll talk about buns, how it's used in A form and B form, with and without tense marking. And I'll also talk about hopes and wishes in Anishinaabe a little bit, because you can use B form buns in those constructions, and it's a good example of when and where you would or would not use a bun in a B form. And then, like I said, I'm going to talk about what's called vowel syncope. Syncope is one of these fancy linguistic terms. It just means the loss of a sound from a word. So I'm just going to talk about how that works in Anishinaabe as compared to Anishinaabe, just to highlight some the dialect differences that we see. So actually, I'll talk about myself first. Miskwaanakwad Manoominii, Miigwech Gainin Dodem, Mawa Soxing, Donjaba, Bangi Gweta and Anishinaabe, going Shingi, Eshki-nishnaabemjig, Guiwazan Swian, Bama Dashingi, Nandiga Kendani o Anishinaabe. Yeah, we go Eshki-nishnaabemjig and Anishinaabe. Abdekni Gitim Shkiswan Je Nishnabemyan Wene Goyak. So my name is Miskwaanakwad. I'm Bear Clan. I'm from here in Wasauksing. And I've been learning Anishinaabe for a while, a number of years, but still got a long way to go, still learning. I didn't speak the language as a kid, and but some years ago, I started trying to learn, mostly from my grandmother, Nokumisabun. She was a first language speaker, and so it's really good to have her to learn from. These days, I learn from my great aunt, who is Nokumisabun Shimeyan, my late grandma's younger sister. So I'm really happy to be able to learn from first speakers, because it's a really difficult language to learn, especially, well, as you know, all of you as learners here, I'm sure you've tried many different ways of learning, and it's really helpful to have a fluent speaker to talk to. So Majtada, we'll talk about this, go over some review, like I mentioned. Verbal order, it's the fancy linguistic term for what we know as A form and B form. So A form, also known as the independent order, is used in main clauses. So an example would be Nagigo-ke, I am fishing. Nagigo-ke, as you see, gigo-ke is the verb there, and then the ne on the front means me. Nagigo-ke, I am fishing. This is probably review for most of you. And it's called independent because it doesn't need support. I think Miigwech said it's independent clause, don't need no man. Strong independent clause. And B form, also known as the conjunct form, is used in quote unquote dependent or conjunct clauses. So a comparative sentence to the one above would be gigo-ke-on, gigo-ke-on. And that means when or that I am fishing. So B form is used in these dependent conjunct clauses and has many, many uses, but just keep in mind that it's used in those dependent clauses. And it's called dependent because it depends on more info to make a complete sentence. So dependent clause. So gigo-ke-on, what that means is gigo-ke-on is not a full sentence in itself. It needs some more support. So when or that I am fishing. I could say something like, Ngichinandam, I am happy. Gigo-ke-on, when I am fishing. So we'll also review tenses and tense marking, at least in A form. And so this is just how to place what you're talking about, present, past, or future tense. So present tense is typically unmarked. So there's no additional information on the verb to talk about something in the present tense. So an example is gigo-ke. That means she, he, or they, singular, is fishing. So it's in the present tense just by default. There's no extra stuff you put on the word to signify that it's present tense. Past tense, on the other hand, as you know, at least in A form, we use gi on the front of a verb. So, gi, gigoke. She, he, or they, singular, fished. So that's all you need to do to put an A form sentence in the past tense. You use gi. Now, the future tense, you use da or ga, depending on the context. So an example of that would be da gigoke. She, he, or they will fish. Da gigoke. Da gigoke. And just as an example of the ga, if it's prefixed for first or second person like me or you use the ga rather than da. So ga gigoke, I will fish. Ga gigoke. So that is the da or ga future tense. But because Anishinaabe is really complicated, there's other future tenses, and you're probably familiar with the we future tense. Some people will call this voluntative or prospective, meaning that it shows that someone is going to or wants to do something. So we gigoke means she, he, or they singular is going to or wants to fish. So that's another future tense in addition to the da or ga. Now there's also a modal. Some people don't call this a tense, but it works a similar way in that it's prefixed on the verb. And that is da. So da gigoke. She, he, or they singular should, could, or would fish. You don't need to worry about da. We're not going to talk about it today. I just wanted to throw it in there because it's often discussed when talking about tense. And like I said, we're going to review some vowels. This is probably very basic stuff everyone's already familiar with, but we're going to review it because it has a lot to do with how vowel syncopation works, and we'll talk about that later. So Anishinaabe or Ojibwe or Anishinaabe has 4 long and 3 short vowels. The long ones are a, e, o, and e. A lot of you who are probably my age might be familiar with the vowel song that we learned in school as kids. I'm not going to sing it now, but there's a song out there to help you practice your long and short vowels. And the short ones are a, I, and o. So there you go. 7 vowels in the language. Thankfully, that's a lot fewer than a language like English does. English has so many vowels that it's really difficult to learn. And vowel length in the language is contrastive. What that means is that vowel length can change the meaning of the word. So you got to be careful when you're speaking Anishinaabe. Keep your long vowels long and your short vowels short, because if you mix them up, if you use a when you're trying to say ah, it might change the meaning of the word, and it could have funny results. I think most learners probably have lots of stories about saying something a bit incorrectly, and it sounds funny to elders and speakers. And as you know, if it has any sort of dirty connotation, people are going to laugh. So it's always a good time trying to speak Anishinaabe because there's lots of laughs. And just to give you examples of how these vowels sound, the long a, is heard in the word mong, like loon, mong. That is a long a, and it sounds like the word long in English, that sound, mong, long. Long e, you would see in a word like geese. Geese is a turnip, geese, and it's the same sound in English as you hear in the word sheet. E, 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 e. That's what it sounds like. And the long o, as in the word gone, which is snow, gone, it's the same o sound that you hear in the English word phone, phone, gone. In some Western dialects, like Southwestern Ojibwe that you hear in Minnesota, Wisconsin, their o sounds more like an oo, so it will sound more like moon. They will say goon instead of gone, and that's just a little bit of a sound difference. Not a big deal. It's still the same language, just sounds a bit different. And then the long e, que, woman. And this one can vary too. Some places they'll pronounce it more like an eh in ed. Oh, sorry, in red, eh, red. In other places, it'll be more like an a sound that you hear in the word bay, quay, or que. And even among a given speaker, their pronunciation can vary a little bit depending on the context. But there you go, long and short vowels. Oh, sorry, long vowels in Anishinaabe. Short vowels, on the other hand, and o. As you hear in the word sub, sub is a net, also pronounced sub depending on your dialect. And this sounds like the English word sub. It's pretty much sounds exactly the same, sub and sub. Same with the short hear it in a word like knit, a spear, knit. Sounds just the same in the word knit, like you pull out of your hair, and knit, knit, There's also a short O sound, as you hear in a word like gunda, gunda, which means these if you're talking about an animate things. And it's the same vowel sound you hear in English in the word foot, gunda, foot. So there you go, basic vowel sounds that you're already familiar with. We'll get back to why those are important later. So, anyone have any questions for now on these, the few things that I've talked about so far? Whoops. So no questions, we'll move along. And we'll talk about buns. I'll try not to rush through this. We got plenty of time. And we'll stop and review when I'm done because this can be a little bit tricky. So we'll start with noun buns, which most people are probably already familiar with. You can use this, you can attach a bun to a noun to indicate that a person or a thing is no longer here or no longer with us. So an example would be Jimon bun, Jimon bun. That's my former boat or the boat I used to have or my old boat. So you can put a bun on a noun to indicate that it's no longer around. And as you're probably aware, we also use bun on people's names or speaking about someone who has passed on. So I talk about Nokmis bun. That means my late grandmother, the one who was my grandmother, Nokmis bun. So noun buns are pretty easy. Now on a verb, there's lots of different uses for buns. So we'll talk about a form first, and I'll just give you some examples of how it's used. Buns are very difficult for myself, and I think for a lot of learners to understand how to use them in our own speech, because it's kind of tricky. It's not as easy as some other things in the language. It's one of these hurdles we try to all get over when learning Anishinaabe in trying to use the language like a real speaker. So buns in the A form can be used to contrast a past occurrence with the subsequent non-occurrence of an activity or an action. I know that sounds kind of vague, but we'll go over some examples to to illustrate what that means. And in the negative, on the other hand, it contrasts a past non-occurrence with subsequent occurrence. We won't worry about negative too much today. We'll just give some examples of positive bun examples. So when it's unmarked for tense, it indicates a past action not occurring now. So basically what it does, it excludes the action from the present time. So gigo ke bun. Gigo ke bun. So this is attached on a third person subject, gigo ke bun. That means she, he, or they singular was fishing, but they aren't now. So it means they were fishing. She, he, or they was fishing. Gigo ke bun. She or he or they was fishing. So as you can tell, it kind of sounds like past tense. It's got a past tense flavor because it's placed in the past. But it is different from gi. We all know as learners, gi means past tense. And so we're compelled to use gi all the time when we want to place something in the past. But in some situations, using a bun is more appropriate. So yeah, bun is not necessarily a past tense, even though it situates activity or action in the past. So comparing that to gi, gigoke, she, he, or they fished. It means they fished. When you use it with a bun, it means she, he, or they was fishing. So gigoke bun, she was fishing. It's a bit different from gi gigoke, she fished. So to give a concrete example here, how would you say something like, I was fishing when you called me? So as learners, we have a tendency to, we would say, gi gigoke, I fished, I was fishing. That's how we kind of conceptualize past tense. We always throw the gi on there. But to say it more appropriately, I was fishing when you called me, you would say, gi gigoke naban, gi bignojian, and gi gigoke naban. So the root verb there, gigoke, and the first person bun form on an A form verb is the N on the front and the naban. So gi gigoke naban, it means I was fishing. Gi gigoke naban, gi bignojian, when you called me. So like I said, and I do this all the time, is I have a tendency to use gi, the past tense gi, where in a situation like this, it wouldn't be as appropriate. And gi gigoke, gi bignojian, that sounds more like I fished when you called me. So it's in the past tense, but it doesn't give the the proper past tense flavor that we're looking for. So this is the example that's always in my head when I'm trying to remember when I use a bun. So I was fishing when you called me. Gi gigoke naban, gi bignojian. So it takes on, when you throw tense marking on there, like a gi or like a we, it has, buns have different interpretations in the A form. So with the past tense gi, it gives a sense of used to do something, used to do a verb. So an example, gi gigoke naban means I used to fish, but not anymore. So there's an implication that I don't do it anymore. So it places it in the past, and also that it's like the action is completed in the past, no longer holds to the present. Gi gigoke naban. So I used to fish. And I don't have the paradigms in this presentation. I'll try to find links where you can get them, just to give examples of the different persons. So you used to fish, gi gigoke naban, and third person, gi gigoke bun, things like that. But I don't have them in here. I'll try to find links. So when we post the presentation, you can have examples of all the different subjects. So past tense gi gives a sense of used to, and with the future we tense, it gives a sense of wanted to, but the bun still places that in the past. So even though we see we as a future-ish tense, it's still placed in the past by the bun. So it gives a sense of wanted to do something, but not anymore. So nui gigoke naban, nui gigoke naban. I wanted to fish, but not anymore. So that future we, like I said, it's also known as like voluntative or prospective, and that conveys a meaning of the subject wanting to or going to do something. So it still has that that interpretation here, but the bun places that in the past. So the wanting to is still there. I wanted to fish, but not anymore in the past. And the other future or modal tenses we see, da or ga or da. I don't know of any examples where bun is used with these ones. I'd have to do more searching around and asking some speakers if that works, and if so, what the interpretations are. But in my investigation so far, you rarely see it, so let's not worry about those for now. It's probably really complicated if it is a thing. So that's A form buns. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
On that one word, why did you put the knob before the bun? Is it because
That,
of the tense?
oh, it's because that's the conjugation for the first person. So the eh plus the verb, then na bun, is the first person conjugation of an A form bun. I know it's kind of confusing. I should have used a third person subject, but it's still a bun. It's just that when you're talking about me, you use the na bun. Same with a second person like you, g, verb, and then na bun. But like I said, I'll try to find links to verb paradigms where you can see all the examples of how the bun forms look in A form. Because yeah, I can see how that's a little, it throws you off a bit when I'm talking about buns, but these particular examples have na bun on them. So yeah, long story short, that's just the first person conjugation of a bun.
I think Ninotic might have a question.
How Ninotic?
Miigwech. Good. So using bun or na bun with the past. So you said that was used to. I feel like somewhere, and maybe I could be wrong because I still haven't really looked into it. But you use it as a pluperfect kind of tense, like I sent a letter that I had written. So could it be something even further into the past? Like,
yeah, I don't see why not. I think bun with a gi can also have like a past habitual reading as well. So like, I guess that's what the used to is conveying. But yeah, like the sense you're talking about as well. I think it's, I think that makes sense.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I think I might be missing something, but I don't understand why they would be singular. And what's an example of they as a singular? So I can.
It's just like she, he, or they, depending on how someone identifies their gender. So as you know,
I get it.
Yeah. So just like they singular, she or he, if someone does not adhere to those pronouns.
Miigwech.
Miskwaanakwad, just to add to when you were talking about the daw there, right there, rarely seen.
Yeah.
The only time that I've heard it in my experience so far was Manyan Corbier was talking about doggy. Should have done something like Bishwagan doggy biskanaba. I should have worn a coat.
Yep, that's a good point. Doggy is a good one.
And then when when those examples were coming up, someone went doggy, ha ha ha, woof woof. It was awesome. That's what helped me remember that anyway. I love our
nice. Yeah, that's a good example. Actually, I should have put one of those in because I remember Manyan talking about doggy with a bun. Minayo? Oops. Now, okay, we'll talk about buns in the B form. This is where things get tricky, but also pretty fun because there's really interesting interpretations of it. So as a generalization, you use a B form bun to indicate that you believe something to be untrue or unlikely, or maybe even perhaps hypothetical. I'm saying perhaps because I haven't really confirmed some of the hypothetical reading, even though we kind of see it quite a bit. But yeah. So when there's no tense marking, a B form bun expresses something untrue or what linguists call counterfactual. So that's counter to fact, that's untrue. It's something that the speaker believes to be untrue. And with je or ge prefix marking, it expresses unlikelihood. This is also a bit of a generalization. There seems to be a bit more nuance between what je and ge are expressing, but we'll just leave it at this for now because it's complicated and I don't understand it. And with wa, I think this could indicate something hypothetical. And an example that us learners are all familiar with is when you ask somebody, Anishwaj kid yambun, like how would you say it? Anishwa kid yambun. So that's a B form bun with, yeah, B form bun. Well, actually C form, but that's getting too in depth for now. So like I said, that hypothetical reading isn't 100% confirmed, but just do your own digging around and see how speakers interpret that. So like I said, unmarked for tense gives this quote unquote counterfactual reading. So an example here is nongum sa go bidoapan. Nongum sa go bidoapan. So had he brought it for me today is literally what that means, but there's an implication that he didn't. So had he brought it for me today, but he didn't. Nongum sa go bidoapan. So that's an example of, we got more unmarked B form buns coming up, but that's a good example there to express that the speaker is conveying that the action didn't happen, or it's untrue. And like I said, with j or gay, it expresses an unlikelihood. So two more examples I found in John Nichols' resource. Excuse me. Ndanogi gwedwe gae je weak bij gade pun. Ndanogi gwedwe gae je weak bij gade pun. So I had been asking in vain that it be moved. So je weak bij gade pun, that he or she moves it. So again, it has a it's got an inference that it's not true, or it's unlikely. And with the gay, anin gay jichge younggebun, so that younggebun is the B form conjugation of me and you in the bun. So anin gay jichge younggebun, what can we do? And he glossed it with this addendum, against such odds. So what's being conveyed there is that it's unlikely. Anin gay jichge younggebun, what the heck are we gonna do? What can we do? And implying that it's not likely that we can do anything against such odds. And like I said, with wa, it might indicate a hypothetical situation. So this question that we're all familiar with, excuse me, familiar with, Anish wa kid yumbun. Some people say wa je kid yumbun, but others don't use a je on kiddo. So Anish wa kid yumbun or Anish wa je kid yumbun, how would you say? So again, this is technically a C form bun, but it's an example of a bun with the wa. Anish waj kid yumbun, how would you say it? And yeah, us learners, this is often the first bun we run into when we're trying to speak Anishinaabe, because it's a very handy survival phrase, because we want to ask speakers how you would say something. Anish waj kid yumbun or Anish wa kid yumbun. So there are, I've seen other examples with wa, and they kind of seem to have this more hypothetical reading as opposed to a like untrue or unlikely. And yeah, still need to do some more digging around on that, but that's a possibility. So we also see B form buns in hopes and wishes, and I found some really good, well, in my investigation came across some really good examples that illustrate how buns are at work in hopes and wishes. So as you probably know, to say I hope or wish something, you use bagish plus a B form. Bagish plus B form means hope or wish. So where I come from, we say bagish na. Other places say bagish, a pagish, beckish, paish. There's all sorts of variants on this bagish. Depending on the dialect, it's a very common word, but they're all the same thing. They all have the same meaning. So an example to say I hope something, bagish with a B form verb, bagish nob kna gayon, bagish nob kna gayon, I hope I win. So you'll notice there's no bun on there, bagish nob kna gayon, I hope I win. Speakers use a B form bun on a Bagish statement when the statement is quote unquote counterfactual or the speaker believes it not to be true. So, as an example, Bagish na jon yam yam ban. That means I wish I were rich. So jon yame means she or he is rich. The first person conjunct preterite form, you have the yam ban. So Bagish na jon yam yam ban. It's kind of a fun word to say, lots of long A's in there. It means I wish I were rich. So the B form shows up because it's untrue. Like I am definitely not rich, so it's counterfactual. It's not true. So that's why I use the bun as opposed to Eshki-nishnaabemjig, I hope I win. So yeah, there's a bit of a semantic difference between hoping and wishing. In English, there's two different words for it, but in the Nishnaabem, we use Bagish to express both of them. So hope in English, there's a sense of possibility there, whereas a wish is unlikely. Like I wish I was rich. You don't think it's going to happen. It's counterfactual. Whereas hoping, it's in the realm of possibility. So in Nishnaabem, it seems like speakers use bun to distinguish this this kind of difference between a possibility and a counterfactual. So Eshki-nishnaabemjig, I hope I win. When I verified this with Manyan, because I was trying to figure out how Bagish worked. So I was asking her all these questions, like, can you say it with this? Can you say it with that? It's using all sorts of different verbs and different conjugations. And so the difference we found between Eshki-nishnaabemjig and Eshki-nishnaabemojig is that it gives a sense of hoping versus wishing. So when I say Eshki-nishnaabemjig, I hope I win. It's possible that I'll win. And when I say Eshki-nishnaabemojig, there's a sense there that I'm not going to win. That sense of counterfactuality that's carried by the B form bun right there. So I hope versus I wish. Both use Bagish, but if it's counterfactual, use the preterite or B form. The bun. So just to give an overview of of the buns and the functions. There's quite a few examples of these in the Big Blue Randy Valentine book. So yeah, there's lots of bun examples in there. I should have put more in this presentation, but you know how that goes. So A form buns, when there's no tense marking on it, it means that the subject was verbing, but not anymore. So like, Gigo bun, she or he was fishing, but not anymore. When you have a gi on a bun, it gives that sense of used to. Gi gigo bun, she or he used to fish, but not anymore. With the we, that sense of wanting to or going to is still there, but it's placed in the past. So nui gigo naban, I wanted to fish, but not anymore. In the B form, unmarked for tense, a B form bun gives a counterfactual or untrue reading. More specifically, it conveys that the speaker believes it to be untrue, which is very interesting. With a j or gay prefix, it conveys a sense of unlikelihood. And like I said, with the wa, it's maybe a hypothetical reading, but still need to investigate that a bit more. And when you're talking about Bagish, use a plain B form to mean hope and a B form bun to mean wish. Kwed wewanan gdanawa.
Yeah, I got one here. So you were talking about B form and bun, I guess like counterfactual or something.
Yeah.
Can you use the example of I wish I won or something like that?
Yeah. Oops.
It was over in the later examples there.
Yeah. Whoops.
Oh wait. Oh, the Zhongyang bun there.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Could you also like convert it to the second person B form suffix and almost use it like as a teasing way, like I wish you were rich, but kind of inferring that you're just joking? Like, does that make sense?
With Bagish is interesting because it always depends on the first person because it's a what they call a performative act. So I wish it's always about me. So I couldn't say Bagish na jonyam yamban. That doesn't it doesn't work to say like I hope you were rich or you hope you were rich.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, Bagish is a bit weird like that. It's always because it's me doing the wishing.
Mm-hmm.
It's always first person. Yeah.
Okay. Miigwech.
Uh-huh.
Ninatik, Gintam?
Yeah. Can you put Bagish with a tense? So Bagish, like, sort of like I was hoping, I don't know. I was hoping you won. Like placing it more in the past.
These Bagish with the B form buns are ambiguous for tense. So one of the examples that oh, what was it? Bagish na da bon yawagba, like I wish I had a car. To place that in the past, you need to use meoja or jinagwa. It's really interesting because I ran into this investigating it with the speakers. It doesn't like prefix tenses on there. You can't put a ga or a gi on a Bagish na statement. So yeah, they're ambiguous for tense. One speaker does use gay on Bagish na statements. So she would say Bagish na gay jon yam yamban to mean the same thing. I wish I were rich, but that wasn't very common. But short answer is I have not seen it acceptable with past tense, which is very interesting. And also that it's kind of ambiguous, whether it's present or past.
Miigwech.
Oh. So that's all I have for buns. I am going to get into the vowel syncopation thing. Actually went through that a bit quicker than I thought I would. But yeah, that's just a brief overview. Keep an eye out, search around for B form buns because there's more to it than I think I've talked about here. And like I said, there's different restrictions on tense marking for one thing and interpretation with depending on what the speaker is trying to convey. So B form is a bit more complicated than the A form ones. At least I hope this overview of the A forms will help you try to use buns in your own speech. For me, I'm still working on it, but it's really hard to keep that in the pocket to be able to use them all the time. But anyways, I'm going to talk about this vowel syncope. It's something that's come up in well, it comes up all the time actually, especially for us learners, at least where I come from, and for those of you I recognize here today, most of us are from areas where our dialects are syncopated, quote unquote syncopated, and what that means is certain short vowels aren't they're not used in the language. Most Western dialects, most other than Eastern Ojibwe and Odawa, actually are non-syncopated. They keep all their short vowels in there. And so it can be difficult when you're trying to learn Anishinaabe and you have resources that come from different places. And at first glance, they look totally different. It's like, well, how come this is like this? And from this book, and then this book says something else. So what I'm going to do is go over what that is and how it works. So hopefully it'll just give you an idea of what it is and why our dialects sound so different on the surface, even though they're very, very similar when it gets down to it. So this word syncope basically just means the loss of a sound from a word. That's what syncope is. and it's usually an unstressed vowel. That's a common thing that disappears in a word, and it's a common process in many languages around the world. Even in, I think you might notice, even in your own speech in English, short unstressed vowels, you'll drop them from your speech when you're talking really fast or casually. And like I said, some dialects differ. You might have noticed differences in pronunciation, depending on where you're learning, what you're reading, who you're listening to. And a big example is Anishinaabemoig versus Nishnaabemoig. So around here, we say Nishnaabemoig. In other places where they don't syncopate their unstressed vowels, it comes across as Eshki-nishnaabemjig. So we'll go over those as examples to illustrate how it works. So Odawa and Eastern Ojibwe dialects show vowel syncopation. So most of us here are from those dialects, and we're very familiar with vowel syncopation. It can make things difficult for us to learn because depending on stress patterns, vowels will show up or disappear. Other related languages like Bodeadmi, Potawatomi, it is also a syncopated language. So it is like ours in that certain unstressed vowels are not there anymore. The good thing about this is there is a very regular pattern to how it works. It's kind of complicated, kind of hard to wrap your head around. So hopefully I do a good job of explaining it, because once you know that pattern, you could take a word like Anishinaabemoig and understand why it changes to Nishnaabemoig in certain dialects. And it all has to do with stress with big exclamation marks, because stress is stressful. In Anishinaabemoig, some syllables are stressed and some are not. Long vowels, syllables with long vowels are always stressed. So if there's a long vowel, you always hear the long vowel, and it's always stressed. There's always an emphasis on long vowels. Final syllables as well are always stressed. So you'll see in the word Anishinaabemoig, the last syllable is short, but it's stressed too. Other words will show this as well, but final syllables are always stressed. And to figure out which ones are stressed or unstressed, which short vowels are stressed or unstressed, you need to combine syllables to build what linguists call metrical feet. And Randy Valentine explains this in the big blue book. And he probably explains it better than me, but this is where I first learned about vowel syncopation and how it works. So a metrical foot is made up of one or more syllables, and those metrical feet can have two short vowels. It can have a short vowel and a long vowel, or just a long vowel. And I'll show you how you build those. So these are the combinations of them. The S means short, and the L means long, and the brackets show the foot itself. So these are all examples of acceptable metrical feet in Ojibwe: two short vowels, two short syllables, or a short and a long one, or just a long one. Now, the second syllable in each metrical foot is the stressed vowel. So when you have ones like a short and short or a short and long, it's the second syllable that will be stressed. And like I said, a long vowel is always stressed. I guess it's stressful being a long vowel. So yeah, here's the same metrical foot pattern with the stressed vowels in bold. So with a short and short, second one stressed, short and long, second one stressed, and a long vowel is always stressed, those poor long vowels. So short and long vowels build them metrical feet. So what you can do is take a full vowel form of a word, or a word like Anishinaabemoig in a non-syncopated dialect, and just look at where the short and long vowels are. So we have Anishinaabemoig right there. We got a short A, short I, another short I, a long A, a long E, short O, and a short I. So building feet according to the metrical foot pattern I showed you in the last slide, you go from left to right and you build acceptable feet. So you got two short ones, to begin with. That's a good foot. And then you have a short and a long. That's another good foot. And then you have a long, which is a foot in itself. And then two short ones, which builds a foot in itself. So applying the, oh no, I didn't put those in bold. Okay, yeah. So applying that foot building rule, this is how the feet come out. So a nish is the first metrical foot with two short, and then shina or shinab is the next foot. And the A creates its own long foot on its own, and then two more short syllables for another foot there. And then applying the pattern of stress, like I said above, the second syllable in a metrical foot is the stressed one. And long vowels on their own are always stressed because it's a hard life for a stressed vowel. So you apply that to Anishinaabe according to how we broke up the metrical feet there. This is what we get. Anishinaabe, Anishinaabe. And that shows you where these stressed syllables are. So in Eshki, when you know what syllables are stressed and what aren't, in Anishinaabe, the unstressed vowels are so relaxed, they just piece TF out. So in Anishinaabe, according to the stress patterns, we see which ones are stressed. And then we have a few short unstressed vowels like the first A, the second I, and then the O at the end there. Those ones are so unstressed. They just bounce and we get left with Nishnaabemjig. Nishnaabemjig. So that is how you get that's how you get Nishnaabemjig from Anishinaabe. So yeah, all that's left are the stressed vowels, and we get Anishinaabe. Now, as many of you are probably well aware, this syncopation pattern, it makes things tricky because depending on, prefixes, preverbs, suffixes, depending on all the different things that get attached to a verb, the stress pattern changes, and therefore different vowels will drop and different vowels will stay. So yeah, underlying vowels can pop up depending on conjugations. So the full vowel form of the word shoe, makizin, it looks like that, makizin. And as if you apply the syncopation pattern to makizin, you get kizin. So that means shoe. Out west, they say makizin. Around here, we say kizin. You can barely hear that M on the front, kizin. Now, what happens if you talk about my shoe, if you conjugate that for me? The full vowel form is nimakizin. So as you know, the ne indicates first person singular, nimakizin, my shoe. Now, applying the vowel syncopation rule to namakizin, we get mukzin. So when it's just a shoe on its own, it's kizin, but when I'm talking about my shoe, it becomes namukzin. So that A, that short A that disappears in kizin comes back when I'm talking about my shoe, namukzin. So yeah, that's just one example of how verb or even noun conjugation can be tricky with vowel syncopation because the stress pattern changes depending on all the different vowels in there, and different ones can pop up and different ones can drop off. So if you're from a dialect that syncopates its vowels, give yourself a pat on the back for sticking with learning the Anishinaabe because it is really difficult when we run into things like this. We have no idea why these different vowels are popping up or disappearing depending on different contexts. And despite this, no matter where you go in Ojibwe country, speakers will understand each other. It's always really fun if you get the opportunity to hear fluent speakers from different different parts of Anishinaabe King talk to each other, because even though the language can sound very different, especially in terms of like this vowel syncopation thing going on, it still works the same. Grammatically, it's very regular. Like the language works the same from here all the way out into the plains, where there's Anishinaabeg out there too. And also the way, just the nature of the language, the way verbs are built, the way the different parts of the words come together to form even a root verb. Even if it's a word that a certain speaker doesn't use, they might still understand it because they know all the different little parts of the root verb. So, kinago ganaj non kidinweonanig. That means all of our dialects are beautiful. All of our ways of speaking are beautiful. Sometimes people get a little chijia about their dialect, about certain ways of saying things, but if there's anything I've learned in trying to learn Anishinaabe one is kinago gnaj non kidinweonanig. All of our dialects are beautiful. And hopefully that's gave you a bit of an idea of how vowel syncopation works. And you can apply that rule if you're trying to figure out how to say something in a syncopated dialect. I've got actually a buddy of mine from out in Minnesota does spend some time working with Odawak and other people. He's speaks Minnesota Ojibwe, but because he understands the stress patterns of the language, he can do a pretty good imitation of a non-syncopated dialect. So that's always fun to see. So how Miigwech actually went through that a bit faster than I thought I would. So Miigwech ge ginwa gibejayegma. Thank you all for coming here. And yeah, we'll just open up the floor if anyone's got questions. Yeah, fire away. Going Geen Bidankwad. Nishagdinen. Nina. Minwakadan.
Oh shit. Anishmayat Gashgas.
Nabadik. Oh gosh, yes. Actually, on that note, oh, sorry, go ahead. Do we have someone else?
Oh, do you know why you would use, like when you used Anishwa Kiriamba?
Versus Wajikidiyamban?
I was gonna say, sometimes you hear gay Kiriamba.
Oh. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know for sure. Let me slide back to that.
Yeah, gets a future tense marker.
I think let me see. This, like I was talking about, the possibly indicating hypotheticality. It might be that people use this form to be more polite. So Anishwa Kidyamban or Anishwa Kidyamban. And they're maybe trying to say like, oh, how would you hypothetically say this? Like, kind of like how in English people change their speech to try and be more polite. Whereas you could actually ask a speaker, Anish Gay Kidyan. How do you say it? Anish Gay Kidyan. Anish Esh Kidyan. How do you say it? And so I don't know if this is a consequence of like people trying to soften their speech, like Anish Wa Kidyamban. How would you say it? Hypothetically, how would you say this? Whereas gay definitely works. How do you say this? How will you say this?
And I just looked it up in Manyan's dictionary, and it appears as a preverb as well. And I understand it's a changed form of the preverbs da and ga, but she has little grammar notes at the bottom, and it says there's a general order restriction, and it says requires an associated verb to be in the conjunct order.
For which one? For gay?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, that's another thing that's I don't know if I have a paradigm or an example of it. Because gay can be the changed form of je, but it can also be the changed form of like the da or ga. So that's I think that's what it is. That's
Yeah.
where it can get tricky because you're not sure which one is actually being used there.
Brandon told me that Kida has got like a built-in ije in it, so maybe that's why it's the change form.
Yeah, and that's why some people don't use je on kid ikido. So that's why they say anish wa kid yamban instead of wa je kid yamban. So yeah, there's a je hiding in there already apparently.
Ejin sastama manda wa mi wajich yamba. That's what I was going to do. Mage, that's what I was supposed to do. No, mage, that's what I wanted to do. No.
So just the same way as we is used in like the voluntative sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also with that, what is that? Continuous past? No, something like that. Going to, past progressive, something like that.
Oh, okay. So what was the example you said? Anishka Kidyan?
Mi wajich yamba. And then that's three sort of understandings of I was going to do, wanted to, or was supposed to.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. Miigwech.
Miigwech got the bottom on manda.
Oh. Going machine Kenzine is na kima good new buns. Bungi dash. Bungi gekendan. I think the A form examples are a bit more straightforward. But yeah, I kind of feel like buns are one of the big three things that are hard for us learners. The first, like, you know, one of the first things we learn is conjunct form. That's a hard thing to wrap our heads around. And then after that, we got to learn VTAs. And now buns to me has been the next hurdle in like learning how to use properly. But it's really fun.
For your syncope lesson there, is there anything you got that that helps kind of like helps you to better understand how to break down the syllables?
If you got Valentine's grammar, I feel like he explains it pretty well when you read it through a couple times, because yeah, this concept of metrical feet is kind of weird. And also the fact that you're building them out of syllables, and you can have, so then 2 syllables can become 1 foot, but also you have single syllables becoming a foot too. So yeah, it's definitely explained in Valentine's book there, the big blue one. And that's where I learned how it works. And yeah, so check that out.
I have a question about j, and it seems like when I look it up in a dictionary or something, it seems like it's just one thing, but it keeps coming up over and over, and it seems to have different meanings in different contexts. Can you say anything about j for me?
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. It has different meanings in different contexts. So I know in other contexts you can use it to mean like in order to do something, like gigo ke je amog gigo, like I gigo yan, I fished so I could eat a fish. So je in that sense is used like in order to, but yeah, I don't know all of the functions of j. And in cases like that, where we have these different parts of speech that have many functions, I find the best thing to do is just to examine examples of them and see how they're used and just go from there. So like if a speaker uses it in this context, then try to replicate that, even if you don't know exactly why it's used there. But yeah, j is tricky for sure. Mina, you? Well, if there's no more questions, Miigwech and the kid meanwhile, keep it jayeg ma, je, gwe, kenda megu. So yeah, like I said, I'll try to find paradigms to add to this presentation, just so you can see examples of the conjugations of buns for all the different persons. Miigwech, gibijayeg.
Na, Miigwech, vamos.